economies of scale to be doing it that way rather than doing it piecemeal. It's much more expensive. There's a lot more opportunities for things to go wrong if I do it that way. And so we will, once we pull what's called our site placard, which is our land disturbance permit, that will be part of the overall scope of what I do now. The State Road 50 access points, that's permitted through a different jurisdiction, so that may not activate at the same time, but my intent is to get it all done at the same time because I don't want to have to mobilize multiple crews to come out there in a staggered manner because I'm going to have to pay each time they go out. I'm going to have to pay them each time. So the intent is to do it all at once. Yes, ma'am.
Mary Story, Unit 6. You said you're going to widen Brookridge Central. So do you mean you're putting in a third lane on Brookridge Central?
So we are putting in a dedicated, if I'm not mistaken right now, and obviously you can hold me to this because I don't live here, my understanding right now is there are basically 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out.
Right.
There's going to be a third lane out that will be dedicated solely for people turning west onto State Road 50. And that is going to be extended up to allow more cars to be able to queue to get out and to alleviate the traffic concerns that you all have by the entrance and by the gate.
So coming in from 50.
Coming in from 50, there's not going to be a third lane. We're just basically widening what's there, creating more of a defined shoulder, and there will be 2 dedicated turns in from State Road 50.
And then when you do it, you put the turn on the Brookridge Central on the side heading towards 50.
Yes, ma'am.
The property, is that coming away from Register, or is it going to affect our front sign?
When you're saying coming away from Register. No, it's going, it's on the Chevrolet side.
It's on the Chevrolet side,
Yes, ma'am.
so our sign will be affected.
Your sign's not going anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question back here.
I have 3 questions. Over here? No, keep.
Oh, sorry.
3 questions, they all
I'm
require
sorry.
a very short answer.
Yes, ma'am.
1, what is the name of the project?
It's called the Alliance at the Grove. And I did that to basically pay homage to Grove Road 1. I know there were a lot of orange groves, but that's the name of the project, the Alliance at the Grove.
The Alliance?
The Alliance at the Grove.
Oh, the Alliance at the Grove?
At the Grove, yes,
Or
ma'am.
Groves?
Grove, just Grove.
one?
Yes, ma'am.
The Alliance at the Grove?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Number 2, how many units are you planning for at this point in time?
When you say units, can you kind of clarify what you mean by unit?
Individual businesses.
So individual businesses, we are, right now we're at 10. And it could go up probably with max out at 14. I'm not going to have more room to do than that.
14, 1-4, max.
1-4. I didn't say max. 1-4 is where I anticipated going. Right now, I'm going to count, so just bear with me. 11. I'm at 11 right now.
You're at 11?
Yes, ma'am.
14 units.
Yes.
The max. The third question is, how many parking spaces are you going to have?
I have no idea how many parking spaces. Enough to where the restaurants were able to commit to the site. And that's, these restaurants have to have a minimum threshold to get through their respective committees. The county has a standard. That's minimum standard. Typically, with a restaurant, it's 10 parks per seat or square footage of the restaurant. Retail is typically four parks per 1,000 square feet. The restaurants require in excess of that amount because what they don't want to have is just a massive traffic jam. They don't want people to come in and not be able to get a parking space and then lose business. And so the way we've designed it is each of those restaurants are able to self-park in the parking fields in their immediate vicinity. We're not relying on what we call in the industry cross-parking, to where you would basically cannibalize somebody else's parking field just to get your consumers on site.
One more question.
Okay.
These 14 units, 11 have been committed, correct?
So so when I say committed, that's either I signed a lease or I signed an LOI and they've taken it to their corporate committee for approval.
Okay. Are any of these 14 units going to be nonprofits?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Those are the questions. Thank you.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
got this gentleman right here that's been standing here for 2 days.
I have just one question, and that question is, will there be sidewalks along the access road for pedestrian traffic?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that one more time?
Will you be putting in sidewalks along the back access road for pedestrian traffic?
I have to look at the plans. I can't recall if that's a requirement of the county. We did have to install, or we do have to install sidewalks off of State Road 50 as they head north into the property. I believe there is a sidewalk. I'll confirm that. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Renee Jasnak, Unit 1. Actually, it was not on social media where the community got an idea of what was going into this new shopping development, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
One gentleman was smart enough to go on Hernando County site and able to pick up the blueprints and read them and showed the residents here that a storage facility 3 stories high and a lube shop was included in the plans of this project. Now, I have come to every meeting that has been held here at Brookridge, and I understand, yes, you have a right to put in a certain percentage of those types of buildings, but when you were up here speaking previously, okay, you only brought up the higher end restaurants or shops. Companies like that you would find in Tampa are moving out here, just like what you're saying tonight. That's what was proposed. Nothing about a 3-story storage unit. That's in the plans, 3-story, and a lube shop. Now, I live 500 feet behind that. I do not want to look out my door and see a 3-storage unit that was never even in the proposed plans that you verbally brought up to the community.
So I can promise you there are no blueprints of a self-storage facility for my site. I would have to submit that. I'd love to see wherever you saw it. I'd love to see it because it definitely did not come from me. But the answer I'll give you with respect to the lube shop is these tenants all piggyback off of consumer traffic. And you come into this site and you get several daily needs serviced while you're there. And a lube shop is perfectly compatible with these restaurants. That happens in Tampa, it happens on State Road 54. And again, it's a small component of a larger project. And in the zoning hearing, intentionally, the county staff and the commission said the only place that could be located was along State Road 50 away from the neighborhood because it's a higher intensity use, which is where it would be.
How will,
Ma'am, I have not proposed a storage unit. As I've said, I have the right to do it in my zoning. But I can stand here with absolute certainty. There have been no blueprints submitted by me on that.
Hold on.
Okay, I'd love to see it.
Hold on, we got.
Where does it say storage? That's just where, that's not a blueprint. That's a health club. That's retail. Yes, that's where, if we ended up doing a self-storage, that would be the only place we would be able to do it. That's not a building, like I haven't submitted for construction plans or for a self-storage facility. I do.
hello? How will the construction,
To do about the turtles that reside there?
So as part of the permitting, there are gopher tortoises on site, and the State Department of Environmental Protection mandates that they have to be relocated before any construction can occur. And so I had to survey the entire site prior to submitting my permits, which I've done. And we had to go back out, or we will have to go back out and resurvey one more time. I've already secured a donor site for the gopher tortoises. There's a very, very particular process that I have to follow. And when you relocate them, it has to be done by a contractor that has experience relocating the tortoises. I don't know exactly how they do it, but again, I can't file for my permits, or I can't begin construction until they're gone, so none of them will be endangered.
how is this construction going to affect us getting in and out?
I can't see the questions.
Here I am.
Oh, sorry.
How is this construction going to affect us getting in and out of Brookridge?
So as part of the permitting process, the county makes us do what's called a traffic management plan so that we can ensure that there's never a moment where the access into and out of the community is compromised. The county wouldn't allow me to, or would not permit the site without us ensuring that that was going to be preserved continuously so that it's not like a situation where if somebody needed an ambulance, that the road wouldn't be shut down where an ambulance could be on the side, or if there was a need for any kind of first responders. The county would not allow us to construct the site in a way that would compromise the ability for those types of vehicles to get into the community.
I have two more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one is, since the Alliance at the Grove and Brookridge community property owners have a common boundary, what is going to be the buffer?
So there's a 20-foot landscape buffer that the county included in the ordinance when they said that because they've told me this on multiple occasions, that they're going to pay particular attention to that. And so, and that was even mentioned, I can't remember the chairman's name at the hearing last fall, but even he mentioned that. And so the county has kind of a baseline landscape requirement in terms of the amount of trees, the distance between those trees, and I'll tell you specifically, actually.
Is this buffer going to be soundproof? Is this buffer going to be light-proof?
So when you permit, there is a requirement that I can't have any light from my property spilling over into adjacent properties. There's an intentional design with the street lamps, for instance, how basically their light umbrella comes down. They cannot bleed over into an adjacent property. The county would not permit without that. It's called a photometric plan. It's part of my land disturbance permit. And then we are landscaping beyond what the county code requires on that northern boundary. And so it's kind of a multiple buffer. You've got the 20-foot landscape buffer. That's also where my detention ponds are located in the upper west and upper east corners. And then in addition to that, the reverse frontage road that the county requires, which is an additional, I think, 50 feet, extends below that landscape buffer. And so you've got about 70 feet of landscape buffer between buildings, my project, or cars, and the neighborhood property lines. And then we're not disturbing, I add one more thing. There are existing trees along those property lines, some pretty tall pines. There may be some species trees back there as well. By species, meaning hardwoods. We're not disturbing any of those trees. We're preserving as much of the existing foliage as we can and building in our landscaping around that. So it actually acts as an additional buffer utilizing what's already there.
Okay. Another question is, how many handicap permit spots are you going to have?
So the county requires, again, I don't know the answer to that. There's a specific number for every 10 spaces. I can't remember what the exact number is, but for every 10 spaces you have to have one handicap spot. And so we're meeting the county standard as applied to the square footage of the restaurants, for instance. We'll have all the requisite handicap spots. We'll also have the ramps. It has to all be ADA compliant. We are bound to that design criteria in our permit.
So 1 per 10, that means if you have...
I'm not saying it's 1 per 10. I don't know what the county requirement is. Whatever that number is, we are meeting that standard.
Okay, and for the environment, are you going to have so many trees per acre in the parking lot?
We have to have essentially every 10 spaces per the county requirement. You cannot have any more than 10 consecutive parking spaces, without a landscape island. And so for every 10 spaces, you can't have 20 spaces in a row and then no trees. Every 10, it has to be broken up by a landscape island with a tree. Coupled with that, in between each of the interior parcels, there's a 5-foot landscape strip that separates each individual, call it use, is probably the best way to describe it. And those will have trees and shrubs. So there will be foliage and greenery going into the site from State Road 50 and coming down to the site from the north boundary.
Are any of these 14 units medical?
Hi. Hello. Okay.
Deb?
Hello. Now,
I was told, and I'm not sure, it might have been hearsay or whatever, the light at Barclay that goes straight into our Brookridge community, are they changing that road also at Barclay that will go straight in our community?
So that's Brookridge Central you're talking?
The cross 50 to go in our community, that's Barclay full.
Correct, which is south. Are they doing, am I doing something to Barclay?
Yeah.
No, ma'am, that's outside the scope. I think the county, I'd heard somewhere,
Yes.
when I first started working on this project, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago, that there was some plans at some point to do something on Barclay, but it's
Oh,
it's
so
not
that has
involved in
nothing
anything
to
I'm
do with
doing.
you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Can you tell us how Tundra Road over here is going to tie in that retention pond and that?
Is Tundra Road the one that runs behind the car dealerships?
Yes.
So where it terminates right now, if I'm not mistaken, it actually lines up with basically a space between the realtor office and the, what do you call that, just a convenience store, liquor store, which I don't know about. And so county or just typical engineering standards, you want driveways to align so that there's not the potential for cross turning, which can basically encourage accidents. And so we would design it so that that road would meet to where in theory somebody could drive. I mean, they're not going to, but you would be able to see oncoming traffic if somebody was trying to cross Brookridge Central to get into the project.
right there, we got a question.
Way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Are the two realty offices and the liquor store gonna go away?
I don't know what's going to happen with the liquor store. I would love to buy it. Oh, I know. Oh, I know. I haven't talked to him directly. I've talked to him through people. But with respect to the realtor's office, that actually is going to be demolished at some point in the future. And that's, I'm sorry.
There's two of them.
That's the standalone building. Yes, ma'am. The one that's closest to the neighborhood. And because that's where I'm going to have my detention facility for stormwater. It's going to be located right where that building is standing. And I'm not sure if anybody that works at the realtor's office here, they're on a month-to-month lease. They have been since we started. I told them they can stay as long as they're able to before I break ground.
Quick question. Coming off of 50, turning in the liquor store and the real estate, are you gonna still leave those turns open or go all the way into the road and then they come back up again?
When you're saying the turns, you mean in the median?
When you come off of 50,
Yes, sir.
you go about 50 feet and you turn into the liquor store.
So I don't know what's going to happen with the liquor store in terms of their access points, what you're referring to as their curb cuts to access Brookridge Central.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. It may be grandfathered in, which is just a term. If it's there and existing, it can stay as long as you don't change it. If you change anything, then the DOT can come in and say, we'll just take it all away. There's not going to be any cross access between my property and the liquor store. There's just no real convenient place to put it. And so that will be the only way you can enter and exit that property will be through those main access points off State Route 50.
So you don't own that property right now?
No, ma'am, I do not. No, it's owned by an independent party. That's the only piece that I don't. Outside of the medical offices that border Grove Road.
Is there anybody else with any other questions?
We have a couple from YouTube.
Okay, back in the back. Go ahead, George.
Do you see in the future where you may own that building?
A bunch.
Oh, a bunch.
Do you see in the future where you may own that liquor store?
I don't know if I should pass or if I should answer.
Pass.
Because we'll help you empty it out.
George asked us, okay. Pass. A couple questions from YouTube.
Plans to put a bus shelter along
I'm sorry, folks, I can't hear the question.
Do you have any plans to erect a bus shelter on Route 50 to help the people who might want to take bus transportation?
So that would be, I think what you're asking is there going to be a bus shelter or a bus stop on State Road 50? So if there's already a stop there, then that's going to have to remain as part of my permitting. I'm not sure where that bus stop is, to be honest with you. Depending on where it is in relation to the 3 access points that we have in our plans that have been approved. But yes, I mean, the bus stop, I can't take it away, so it will still be there, it just may not be in the same place.
I wanted to know if you would augment it with a shelter so the people who go to your stores don't have to stand out in the rain waiting for the bus.
When it comes to the design, because I mean, that's a public facility, when it comes to the design of the public facility, the county dictates that. I don't have anything to do with it.
And how big is the retention pond that's going to replace the real estate office? Is this going to be as big as the one behind it?
So it's I can tell you the exact acreage actually. So it's 0.87 acres is the northwestern detention pond. The northeastern detention pond is, I think, 2.5 acres.
And they both border on the residents?
Correct. And those will be landscaped, to answer one of your other questions. Unless you had an 8 or 9, no. But there'll be perimeter landscaping there that will be coupled with the landscaping I'm putting on the buffer. So again, it's the site lays out well that that's where those ponds had to be located because it does act as an additional buffer.
We have some YouTube questions.
Let's do it.
All right, Kevin. Anthony Langone, Unit 3. Are they going to be moving the Brookridge sign?
No, sir.
I was running around, so That's okay. I didn't hear you when you were doing
That's
that.
Okay.
The next question was Jerry Kraft, Unit 1. How close will the road be to the current fence behind the homes in Brookridge, I assume?
There's a 20-foot landscape buffer. Then there's the curb for the road. So it'll be 20 feet from the actual fence line and the existing vegetation. And I believe the width of the road is required by the county standard is 50 feet. That's how big the right of way is, because that's going to be a public road. I'm not going to own it. The county's going to maintain it. That's a stipulation of the county.
Second part to that question, will you put up a solid fence for the residents that back up to the property to reduce noise and for privacy?
So we are putting up the landscaping, and it's tiered landscaping to create an opaque buffer. The problem with fences, and I mentioned this in the zoning hearing, I don't know if you all remember this, the existing vegetation and tree lines, those existing root systems, if I put a fence in there, I'd have to tear all of it down. And because you have to have one continuous footer for a fence, and it's disruptive, it would kill everything that's there right now.
That's good. That's all from YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question here, please. Next. Me.
Oh, back here.
Right,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Somebody mentioned to me there was for sale or lease signs, but that property, even though it looks like it's part of your property, is not part of your property, right?
When you say for sale or lease, which property are you?
Further towards the other buildings that are already up on.
Those are my leases. Okay, so there's a lot of signs out there.
Yeah.
I was happy that my sign actually stayed up, the AX, because I've got a business or strategic partners, Wilson Development Group. You saw 2 company logos on that sign. That's one of my strategic partners. We share office space in Atlanta. There's a leasing sign out there with my leasing reps from Colliers International. It's a guy named Tyler Peterson. He's actually from Brooksville in Kalamahoney. And so they are employed by me to lease the project. When it says for sale or lease, that's kind of a standard verbiage that they put on leasing signs to generate activity, because some of the tenants, and not every tenant, but some tenants prefer to own rather than allow me to build for them or sign a lease with me. And so that's the reason for that, is to let the tenants know that we're not opposed to selling. I don't want to sell, I'd much rather have a lease, it's more valuable. But some tenants that's their standard, they just refuse to do a lease, they only will buy. So that's the reason it says for sale or lease. But it's not like I'm not trying to sell the property. So maybe that was part of where maybe people said I was not going to do it. It is confusing if you're not in the industry, so I apologize for that.
Very good. Thank you very much for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
The question I want to ask is right here.
Oh, sorry.
Right here. I hope you put in a grocery store. I mean, and the reason I say that is because there's so many elderly people in here, and they can get on their golf carts and they can just go get their milk and their bread.
So believe me, I'm trying. There's a limit to what I can do and what I can't do. These tenants do operate on their own parameters, their own diagnostic analysis of any given site. They have radius restriction, radius covenants where they don't want to be close to another competitor because they're going to lose market share. So believe me, I'm trying. I do know that there is another grocer coming to the market, not on my site. There's one of those kind of call it soft goods retailers that went bankrupt recently. They had 3 Bs in their name. I believe there's a tenant going in their space that is a grocery. That's it. So I'm not going to say that I'm doing one, I'm not going to say I'm not. I do have an Italian restaurant, it's...
Kevin,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is any of the islands coming in on the Central Boulevard going away, or are they going to get smaller?
Any of the...
The islands, you know, where the tree, the medians. Is any of them going to?
So I'm not touching the medians. There's already a dedicated, we call it dedicated turn lane as you're heading eastbound going towards the Sun Coast. There is a median, there's a turn lane in the median that right now just dead ends into my property. That's going to be one of the entry points into my property off of 50, but I'm not doing anything with respect to touching the median. That's very expensive. DOT does not like you to do it. And so, and given that it's all the infrastructure is already there, they basically said you have to work with what's there.
Okay, that's why I wanted to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I can assure you, you are going to be very happy with the Italian restaurant that's going to be
Lisa, she wants me to ask you.
Yes, ma'am.
What's going to happen when you guys start cutting everything down and all those, not only the turtles, but the snakes and all that stuff?
So I got this question.
What is going to happen to the people that's on the fence?
So I've gotten this question from one of the members of the boards I've met with in the past. So when we come in to relocate the gopher tortoises, we're going to put up a silt fence. And you all, I'm sure, have seen silt fences before. That's preventing any more tortoises, excuse me, from coming back in to the property. I'm not moving them next door. I mean, we're taking them to a ranch pretty far away. But with respect to any wildlife that's on site, I mean, that silt fence is going to protect a lot. I can't promise, like, that a snake's not going to sneak through. I mean, we'll do our best not to, and believe me, once we start, I mean, it's the only thing we've really found, and I've walked that site, I mean, I don't just go traipsing through the bushes, you know, not looking down. I mean, again, silt fence is going to do a lot to impede any movement north out of my side into the neighborhood.
Okay, now this one over here wants to know,
Yes,
is there going to be any fast food coming in?
So we have, and by fast food, so I look at, so there's different things. No, because no, all those concepts are already here. And we have what's called fast casual, which are concepts like Chipotle, for instance. I mean, I know they're already here, but that's what you consider fast casual. And so we're working with a couple of fast casual concepts. Now, with respect to fast food, I'll just highlight this because I get this question a ton. With drive-thrus, COVID, like what I was referencing earlier about how you don't need anchor tenants like you used to even 10 years ago, all of these tenants now require drive-thrus because of COVID. When they all had to shut down, they had no way of operating without being able to service consumers via, you know, a drive-thru. And so concepts that historically have not had them, like Panera, Chipotle is an example, they all now require it. And so there will be drive-thrus. I'm saying all that to say there will be drive-thrus. But with respect to how we have designed the project, it's predominantly called casual restaurants, which are seated restaurants.
Will that be outside seating?
There will be patios. Now, some of these tenants, they have their own specs that they design it to in terms of the number of seats, but there will be, based on the concepts that we have that are coming in.
Is there any other questions? No? All right. Well, we just want to thank you very much for coming and answering our questions. We look forward for you coming back and when you get...
Yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
The people are relative to this at the same time. I have to be here. I'm in the middle of it. But, we had to wait for the people at home to lift like the delay a couple of times, so it's like, it's like,